This week, we're taking a look at the Sasfin Value Fund, managed by David Shapiro. Fund size 107 million rand, TER 1.48%, and the objective, the JSE SWIX. So, David, I'll give the floor over to you. Tell us about this fund, what you aim to do.
What I aim to do, or what
what you are doing, firstly, because you won an award for this.
I did, and surprisingly enough, I never ever thought I'd get there, but it did remarkably well. Whether one can repeat it is very difficult, because I don't think you go out to try and win awards, or all you do is try and earn reasonable returns and buy quality stocks, and that's all it was about. I must tell you something though. This fund does have a focus, and I stay true to it. In other words, I try and buy shares that operate in South Africa, that benefit from South Africa expansion and Africa expansion, companies that go into Africa. And I've always stayed with that. The fact that I've got Aspen in it and Naspers, when I originally bought them, most of the focus was around Africa. It's only recently that Aspen are now earning more outside of South Africa, and Naspers as well, that the 10-cent story is. But generally, I look at South African and African expansion stories. And I was very fortunate over the last few years to hit some absolute winners, using that focus. Of course, I'm governed by a lot of things like.
So what about an SAB and a Richemont? I mean, you said you like a Richemont, but they obviously not SA focused.
I've ignored Richemont, but I'm now introducing SAB, and the reason is that SAB are now starting to generate or put a lot more focus on the African continent. So, in fact, as we talk at the moment, I'm starting to buy SAB for that very reason.
How do you call SAB a value? I mean, it's a value fund, but SAB surely wouldn't be classified in the value space.
That's the thing. We've changed the name of the value fund. It's now called this. It's called they've taken away all categories,
yes.
So it's now.
Because you were talking about the fact that you shouldn't necessarily always have to clarify yourself as momentum or value or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it was a strange thing because they struggled, and I'm glad that the CIS now have the collective investment organization or association now have taken away all those categories, because it was very difficult. I wasn't a general equity fund because I had a special focus, and they shoved me into the value category. And of course, I still look for value. I always look for dividend yields as cash generation more so than dividend yield. Does a company generate a huge amount of cash? What does it do with that cash? How does it spend it? Is it sensible? I'm a big Buffett follower, although I've never really, I've been following Buffett for years, although one has to diversify a lot from his strategy. We can't apply it in the South African context, but there are a lot of rules that are followed very, very closely there.
Well, I mean, David, let's just put up your asset and sector allocation graph, and I mean, just have a look there and just talk us through that, because I mean, do you think about your sector allocations, your asset allocations before you start building, or is it literally bottom up? You're looking for the best ideas from your perspective, from a valuation perspective, and you're trying to make sure that those migrate into the portfolio.
Strangely, the fund is a very small part of my business. I manage mainly wealth, private wealth. So in those categories, when I've managed private wealth, I go for themes. I like themes, and I buy according to themes. Who's got the money, companies expanding into emerging markets, and so on. So I have a completely different asset allocation for my clients, and they have different needs. But for this, it's been purely picking. I want to call it the Champions League, that I regard. What are the Champions Leagues? What are the best 22 stocks that I can find that fit into my mandate? And that's what I did.
Well, I mean, look, it's a nice client, because I mean, we can call it a 107 million rand client basically, because I mean, and
small,
it's
literally one of my smaller clients,
and obviously a client that that allows you to buy long term and and not necessarily trade.
My producer just wanted to reiterate that, speaking about Champions League, you support Arsenal, and they're not doing so.
So
I mean,
you know what? I really there was absolute no need to bring that up.
Let's look at the performance.
All right, let's maybe do that. If we look at your performance relative to SWIX, I mean, you literally beat the benchmark, and this is from a SWIX perspective now, 12, 24 months, 36 months, over 60 months, which is a 5-year, and those are per annum numbers, is, 8.5 versus 10, which is, slight underperformance relative to that. And I mean, if we fast forward and we look at, your fund, but now we look at it relative to the Aussie, you'll see exactly the same thing, kind of good solid performance over 12, 24, 36 months, but then over a 5-year period, slight lag. It looks like you might have been caught unsided, on the wrong side of the 2008 subprime crisis.
I was, that came crashing down, and particularly the shares that I was exposed to got hurt more so than the Aussie or the Swix, the heavyweights. It's uncorrelated. I try to be uncorrelated to the, to the Swix or to the all share. So I try, find companies that are not really right at the top end. So what were my winners? You can see from the choice of stocks. Omnia, great little company. I loved I saw them shift towards healthcare. So it was life healthcare, and then I supplemented that with Mediclinic. What were the other ones? Nampak. I saw the turnaround in
You're
Nampak.
probably the only South African that bought retail shares, because all the local people are saying it's the foreigners that are buying it, but they've done phenomenally well.
I did very, very well out of ShopRite. I always liked Whitey and where he was going, and I still think his expansion into Africa is something that we have to follow. I had Exara and Kumba, and the reason is that Kumba was the only way I could get into steel production, because they were the only people who were producing anything. Wrong reason, but I made a lot of money out of them. And Exara was energy, coal. So that was the reasoning behind why I bought them originally. Funny, I'm getting out of Exara at the moment.
I was going to say, people are very concerned about that.
Yeah, I'm getting out of Exara now. I'm battling. I had MTN and Vodacom. I bought them simply on their dividend yields when they were significantly lower. MTN's results I didn't like. I'm actually struggling to find 2022 shares at the moment that fit into where I would like to be.
What's your view on domestic industrials, the Imperials, the Bidvest? Because they obviously, our industrial market is the big global industrials and then the local industrials. And the local industrials are struggling with this kind of, GDP kind of story and the inflation and all of that. So what do you see there?
I haven't got Bidvest. I've got it in all my other portfolios, and it still remains a top share in my portfolio. The reason is that Brian Joffe is expanding more offshore. So it's more 55-60% offshore. Imperial I've got. And what I like about Imperial is I bought them more for logistics. And the reason is that I see these clients that come in to speak to me, and they're all dressed like farmers, but they haven't made their money out of farming. They've all made it out of transport. So there's huge margins in transport. I said, well, how do I convert that, And I would have bought something like Value, but you can't trade in it. And I think Imperial, probably Grindrod, but I prefer Imperial. I like Hubert Brody. I think he's great.
Is that a way you pick stocks? Is you look at the kind of high net worth indivigibles who come into you to give you their wealth, and you say, so how did you make your money?
Dead right.
I'll invest in your company.
Exactly right.
That's so you give me your money and I'll invest in your company. It all kind of equals out.
It points you to where money's being made. You learn how the real economy works, and you look for companies that, you look for those things. I buy Imperial for its logistics and the expansion of its logistics, because I believe there's going to be significant trade into Africa.
David, just before we close, what's next for the fund? I mean, because you've talked about all the stocks that you have held for some time. Are there any specific changes you're looking to make in light of where we are right now in the markets?
I think South Africa's going through a rough time. I think it's I've got no worry about the quality of the shares that I own now. Whether we can repeat that kind of performance in the South African market is going to be difficult. I'll be honest, I'm battling to find, those that I mentioned that I'm selling, I'm battling to say, so what do I buy instead? It's not easy. And what I might do is just say, well, listen, if I do sell, just spread it amongst the ones that I've got and are still winning.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great having you on the show, and of course getting some insight to back in the day when, of course, I wasn't...
a stockbroker was a stockbroker.
Yeah, a stockbroker was
Your parents weren't even married in those days, hey?
I don't know. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, that's it for this edition of Wealth Quest.